The morning started like any other, a warm cup of coffee, the low hum of morning news, and the familiar sight of my son's favorite toys scattered across the living room floor. But on that particular Tuesday, something strange happened. My phone, silent on most mornings, vibrated with an alert. The message displayed on the screen made my heart sink. You saw something you shouldn't have. I brushed it off as a prank, yet a dull, instinctive fear nestled in my chest. The sender information was blank, and the font looked off, almost as if it had been typed in a broken, distorted manner. Still, I convinced myself it was a mistake, but the nightmares began that very night. In the darkness, I found myself wandering through a forgotten library, its aisles stretching endlessly, with books that seemed to breathe as I passed. In my dream, I was searching, though I couldn't say for what. The more I walked, the more oppressive the atmosphere became, as if something unseen watched me, waiting. When I woke, drenched in sweat, a new message was waiting. You need to stop, or you'll lose more than sleep. It was paired with a photograph, showing me from behind, searching those endless shelves. Days passed, and then my wife began acting strangely, as though she had no memory of our son. His toys vanished. His room appeared to have always been an empty guest room. In a frenzy, I sought out proof of birth certificate, photos, anything, but each trail led to a dead end. It was as if he'd been erased from existence. That's when I found it, a small, leathery disc on my nightstand. The coin was warm to the touch, with faded engravings on both sides. Under the light, I could barely make out what looked like symbols of warning, though I couldn't decipher them. My instinct told me it was tied to the sinister messages and my son's disappearance. Days turned into a blur of unanswered questions and sleepless nights. Shadows seemed to stretch longer, and familiar rooms felt foreign, as though some dark force seeped into every corner of my life. I'd wake from sleep to more messages, each more disturbing, each one taunting, hinting that I could never escape this unseen horror. One evening, while taking refuge in a dim motel, a final text arrived. It read, "You're too deep now. You cannot undo what's been seen." I stared at the words, their weight pressing down like a shroud over my mind. In a fit of panic, I dashed to my son's empty room and found the coin once again resting on the floor, but it had changed. Now it bore the faint outline of my son's face, trapped and lifeless. And in that moment, I understood. I hadn't just lost him. He'd been consumed by something far darker, a place where reality and nightmare blended into one, and where things lost were meant to remain lost. I was left with nothing but a dark, suffocating emptiness, and the knowledge that whatever had taken him was now coming for me. As I emerged from the shower, the unsettling chill had taken root in me, like a creeping vine wrapping around my bones. I was drying off when I noticed something, a faint rust-colored stain on the mirror, smeared as if someone had hastily brushed it with their fingertips. No one had been in the house, and I hadn't seen it before. But when I leaned closer, the outline became clearer, almost spell. With a deep breath, I wiped the mirror clean, telling myself it was nothing. But the unease clung to me, shadowing my every movement. Stepping out of the bathroom, I noticed the coin on the nightstand once again. I hadn't left it there, but it was unmistakably the same, that odd, scaly disc, with the barely there engraving that my mind twisted into shapes and S. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was getting warmer, pulsing almost, as if it had a heartbeat. I tried to distract myself, scrolling through old messages and photos, trying to remember the joy of my son's laughter, but even his image seemed distorted now, as though I was looking through a foggy lens. My own memories of him started feeling like a dream, and existence fading into whispers. I felt panic prickling at the edges of my mind, grasping desperately for any tangible proof he'd been real. That's when the phone buzzed again. My stomach dropped as I glanced at it. "You saw something you shouldn't have. And now it's time to pay the price." A chill crawled up my spine. It was then that I noticed a new attachment. Reluctantly, I opened it. The image was even darker than the last, but as my eyes adjusted, I saw me. Sitting in my home office, frozen in time, my back to the camera. But it wasn't just me alone. There was a shadow looming just behind me, barely a silhouette in the dim light. The realization hit me like a punch. That wasn't a recent photo. It was from months ago. The exact night I'd stayed late, working on a property sale that had somehow slipped through the cracks. The eerie detail haunted me, but the worst part? I couldn't remember anyone else being in the office with me that night. Feeling a surge of anger mixed with fear, I typed back, "What do you want from me? What did I see?" I hit send and waited. The silence hung thick and oppressive, stretching into minutes. Then the response came, stark and simple. "You saw everything, and now you need to see more." Suddenly, I felt something shift in the air, a sensation like an unseen presence. The room dimmed, the walls seemed to close in, and a soft hum filled the space. My phone went dark, leaving me alone in an unnatural silence. I stood there, feeling like prey in a trap, and realized I wasn't truly alone anymore. The shadows had found me, and they were waiting. A quiet click sounded from the corner of the room, so soft I almost thought I'd imagined it. My eyes darted toward the source, but all I saw was the shifting darkness. The strange coin lay still on the table, but it seemed to pulse faintly in the low light, drawing my gaze as though something inside it was alive, watching me. As I stared, a flood of memories that weren't mine, flashed through my mind. A dense forest, whispers in the trees, shadows moving just out of sight. Faces distorted with fear, fleeing but never truly escaping. These weren't scenes I had lived, yet they felt all too real. And then I remembered the figure in my office that night, standing behind me. My mind struggled to place it, to assign it a form or face, but it was always just beyond the reach of memory. I couldn't make out any details, only a chilling certainty that it had been there, watching, waiting. My phone buzzed again, another message. "I'll show you," it read. "Come and find me." A small voice inside screamed for me to turn back, to run. But an even stronger compulsion pulled me forward. Like a moth drawn to a flame, I felt myself compelled to find the truth, no matter the cost. I grabbed my keys, pocketed the coin, and stepped outside. The air felt heavier, colder than usual. It wrapped around me, pressing down like a weight on my chest. I got into my car, barely able to steady my shaking hands as I drove through the night, guided by instinct alone. The roads twisted and turned, unfamiliar yet eerily natural, as if something deep within knew where I was going. Eventually, I found myself at an old, crumbling building on the outskirts of town. It was abandoned, its windows shattered and roof caving in, but something about it seemed familiar. With a deep breath, I pushed open the rusted door and stepped inside. The darkness was absolute, swallowing me whole. I fumbled with my phone's flashlight, casting a thin beam of light across the decaying walls. In the faint glow, I saw markings etched into the walls, strange, looping symbols that seemed to pulse with an unnatural life. Then, a soft whisper echoed through the room. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable, taunting, waiting. As I turned, the beam of my flashlight landed on a figure standing in the corner, shrouded in darkness. My heart froze. It was the figure from the photograph, the one standing behind me in my office. I took a step back, but my feet wouldn't move. The figure shifted, stepping forward, revealing hollow eyes that seemed to bore into my soul. My throat was dry, my voice barely a whisper. "What do you want from me?" It tilted its head, and in a voice that seemed to echo from a place far beyond, it spoke. "You sought the truth, and now you will carry it." A sudden cold washed over me like a tidal wave, pulling me under. The darkness seeped into my skin, wrapping itself around my thoughts, my memories, until I couldn't remember where I was or why I'd come here. Everything faded, my mind blank, filled only with shadows. When I finally opened my eyes, I was back in my home, sitting at my desk. My phone lay in front of me, its screen dark. For a moment, I couldn't recall how I'd gotten here. Then I noticed the coin, lying innocuously on the desk, and a single message on my phone. "Now you understand." I reached for the coin, but my hand stopped, hovering just above it. I didn't need to touch it to know. The shadows weren't just in that place. They were within me now, a part of me. And from that day on, I became something more than myself, a keeper of secrets and shadows, bound to walk in the darkness, forever haunted by what I'd seen. And every night, when the lights go out, I can feel them stirring, waiting, their whispers growing louder. Because now I'm one of them.